My name is Finn Mpofu. I am the director for Startup Grind in good old Scotland. Yeah! It's an absolute honor to introduce the next fireside chat. It's with a company I personally love and adore greatly called Oracle. And for many of you that's probably very familiar with Oracle, you'll know that they're going through this phenomenal transition now of focusing on the cloud. And so it's certainly very appropriate that we actually have two very senior executives from Oracle that will be leading this fireside chat. We have Reggie Bradford, who is a Senior Vice President of Product Development, and Doug Kering, who is a Chief of Staff and a Senior Executive Vice President over at Oracle as well. So ladies and gentlemen, let's give a huge Startup Grind welcome for Doug and Reggie.
Thank you. I'm Doug Kering, this is Reggie, by the way. And it's really funny because in the back, they're like, are you guys Penn and Teller? Is this going to be the great illusion here of why is Oracle here at the startup gig? There must be something else going on. But the reality is, I think, as we think about it, our company, we're probably the biggest startup you may know something about, because we're completely reinventing our company. As we move to the cloud, it means starting over, and starting over, as everyone knows, as a startup, is pretty hard. That being said, we have the benefit of a pretty large customer base that's going to come with us. But we also think there's a great ecosystem that we can help create. And so Reggie and I wanted to join you today, talk a little bit about what we're doing with startups and a little bit about our experiences. So, with that, maybe Reggie, I can turn over to you and to ask you to talk a little bit about what we're doing at the startup community.
Yeah. Thanks for everybody coming out today. And the first thing I want to say is I sat in your chair. Most of you guys are entrepreneurs, and I came from the startup ecosystem. My third startup was acquired by Oracle called Vitru. So that's how I got to Oracle back in 2012. And I think it's just important to frame that. As Doug mentioned, we've been at this a long time, but really one of the things that attracted to me, I was talking in an earlier session about when I was acquired, and one of the companies that tried to acquire us that didn't get the acquisition, the CEO, a famous SaaS CEO, said, "You won't last more than a couple weeks at the big company," because I'd been on the startup side. In my first startup, I lasted 9 months, and the second one, 14 months at the big company, and I've been here almost 5 years. And I think the reason I'm still here is that I really do see that there's tremendous change and upheaval. And we very much see that, everybody's faced with this challenge, innovate or die. And, we've got a very, very strong vision and focus around cloud, and startups are a huge part of that, which I think we'll get into in just a minute.
Yeah. Well, I also run the corporate development group at Oracle. So if you want to meet me afterwards, if you want to start pitching your company, I'm the guy that writes the paychecks on that front. So
I should say Doug was one of the first people I met at Oracle.
Yes. Reggie and I met, and we pranced into the moonlight as I wrote him a very large check to get him to come to Oracle. But I think the reality, which most people don't understand, is the vast majority of all the acquisitions at Oracle are actually startups. I mean, the idea for us is to be out there on the leading edge of innovation and to bring in great companies and to make them successful. So part of that is obviously is to help create that sense of community and figure out how to leverage our assets for the benefit of startups. So I think, Reggie, maybe you can tell us a little bit about what we're doing in that area.
Well, one of the things that in all three of my startups, and I know you guys know this, but the biggest challenge that I faced as a founder was, how do I generate revenue and how do I find reference customers? And frankly, again, when we were approached to be acquired by Oracle, one of the biggest values I saw in Oracle was, this is a company that is changing. And I think the stat that someone told me was over 50% of the employees came through acquisitions, and it's a company that really values opinions of thought leaders from outside the company. It's not necessarily insular culture. And a company that had 420,000 enterprise customers in 180 countries. So that was like, wow, I can really scale my business globally.
Still got a good memory. I like that.
Exactly. So I've been tasked now to lead our startup initiatives, and one of the one of the key ones. We started about a year ago an accelerator, for lack of a better term, around building next generation of cloud. And it's part of a broad, swath, if you will, of opportunities that we're building with kind of the next generation around cloud computing. So we have things like Code, which is a developer conference that we're rolling out and starting in San Francisco in a couple weeks. We've got University, where we give cloud capabilities to students to build projects. Academy, we've got Oracle Digital. We've got a whole bunch of things that are going on about, there's a generational shift, and startups are being created all over the world, and we're seeing this mentality. So what we announced is an expansion of the program that we started in Bangalore about a year ago, where we only bring in a small group of startups. It's product development led. So we give real peer-to-peer mentoring with startups. It's not about sales or field or trying to sell into these startups. It's about how do we create and help the startups build better products and create capabilities. That's job number one. Number two is we give access to space and connection. And number three, we give them access to the cloud so they can build on our software as a service platform infrastructure, primarily platform infrastructure. You don't have to do it, but we encourage it because we want to help companies that can build and scale globally. It's a pay-it-forward model, so we don't take any equity. So we feel like we come in and we're complementary to the ecosystem. And I've been shocked at the response that we've had from the market when we've announced these expansions around the world about how receptive people are, because this is not, I know, a new concept, but we feel like if you think about the pivot to cloud, only 7% of enterprise workloads have been delivered through the cloud to date, even though we've been building our applications for the cloud for 10 years. So we think it's a perfect time to harness and partner with the next generation of startups. And then the last thing I want to mention, which is my first comment, was how do you find reference customers?
Yeah.
And revenue, which $1 of revenue, as you know, valuing that from an M&A is dramatically more valuable than $1 of equity or cash or whatever on the balance sheet. So if we're successful, and this is an if, but so far so good, we want to take the startups, the small group of startups globally that are in our program, and connect them with our 420,000 enterprise customers, because they want to see us. Oracle comes in, has a very large relationship with lots of large companies around the globe. We also sell to mid-sized companies, but they want to see us help them enable their future and think about what are the next best startups and how do we partner and create an ecosystem where startups can go in and sell to our customers and we can deliver together.
Yeah, I joined Oracle in the year 2000. It was a great year to join any company in the technology space. And actually, the year I joined, we had a venture fund at Oracle, and so we were investing in a lot of companies, things like chipshot.com, which was the online marketplace for golf gear. And there was no synergistic relationship with Oracle, but we had put $1 million into Red Hat, and overnight it became $100 million when they went public. And so we, of course, thought to ourselves, well, gee, we're geniuses. We put $1 million to work, we made 100 return. If we're that smart, let's put $5 and $10 million to work rather than $1 million. And it was several $100 million of lost money later that I think we woke up and said, as a company, we really shouldn't be in the venture capital business. And there's a lot of great folks out there with in the VC community that can give companies guidance. I think as we've transformed, we've thought differently, which is rather than give you capital, which in today's time, if you're a good company, isn't the hardest thing about creating a great business, but it's about those other things. It's about access to other technical talent, access to to mentorships, et cetera, that I think can help make startups successful from a differentiation standpoint. And that's really, I think, where we spend our time.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and we see, if you think about, we were talking about it earlier, but the trends around globalization with, 4 billion people with a mobile phone now, messaging platforms now bigger than social networking. You can create a startup anywhere in the world if you build a great product and focus on delivering value for customers, and you can sell to the world. And so I think that's where we see, things around AI and Internet of Things and cybersecurity. We're not focused on any specific sector. Obviously, we sell to everybody, but there's tremendous innovation. I think the next 5 to 10 years are going to be, I don't know how you feel, but are among as exciting as we've ever seen. And we know that we can't get there by ourselves. We've got to partner and create opportunities for startups to basically help lead the way and drive that innovation.
Yeah, I think we've always loved the idea of walking into an account and say that's an all Oracle shop, but the reality is most companies don't operate that way. They have an ecosystem of things. No one can be all things to all people, and part of it is create as a rich an ecosystem as possible in order to help our joint customers be successful. Reggie, maybe highlight a couple or one or two examples of companies that have been in the program. Some success stories that we've been able to accomplish so far.
Yeah, so we started in Bangalore, as I mentioned, and we just announced expansion into Bristol, UK, Paris, Singapore, Sao Paulo. I'm missing a few other ones, Delhi, Mumbai. But a couple I would mention, if you think about those markets, they're not necessarily, obviously we're not even in Silicon Valley yet, but we're outside the US because again, there's this notion of the rise of the rest. And again, we're headquartered here. We love Silicon Valley, but there's tremendous amount of technology being developed all over the world, and we go and find it wherever it is. And I think that was one of the things that attracted me. My 3 startups were in Atlanta, and it was always interesting to be competing with Silicon Valley. So we went to Bristol. There's a startup there called Yellow Dog, and they're basically a next-generation rendering technology. So they want to build the world's fastest supercomputer without having any processing power in there. So they came to us, and they're using our bare metal, which is our next-generation infrastructure as a service, and in Bristol working alongside our engineers, giving us feedback, requirements, and they were using some of the other competitors for their infrastructure, and they found that our product worked substantially better. But more importantly, it's been a wonderful collaboration where we're working engineer to engineer with them, and then their product's performing. They've scaled now. They're in 500 customers around the globe, and then we're actually going in and partnering together with them into some of the largest media companies now that are Oracle customers around the world. So that's where we see the symbiotic relationship. Another one in Paris is called Shortwaves, and they're next generation a training module that connects into our HCM platform. And we went into a large French telco, Orange, and sold in jointly together. We have a precursor to the accelerator called We Love Startups in Paris, which is more of a biz dev mentoring program. And now that relationship with that customer is expanding globally, and then we're looking at other markets and around not just France. So we're starting to see, and then in the Bangalore cohort, there's companies in AI. There's a company that I'm actually a mentor to that's doing IoT for monitoring babies, and they've just presented at CES, Consumer Electronics Show, and they just raised their next round of capital. And so we're very early, but we're very encouraged because we're not trying to, we're not picking one sector. We're trying to be intentionally vague because we have so many different businesses. If you're a Tinder, it's probably not going to make sense. And if you're if you're a certain stage company, it may not make sense.
It can be anything, because the great thing about it is from a platform standpoint, if you just like that 3-letter acronym company that's not IBM that we have our eyes focused on, it's the same notion of standing up the compute that you need in order to run your business in a way that's easily purchased and scaled and upward and downward. I think that's what we're trying to do, except bring the enterprise scale, security, reliability, some of the other components that certainly our biggest customers expect from us, that as a ecosystem we're helping to help proliferate with these partners.
Well, and I think, just if I'm honest, when my own startup 10 years ago, we went to infrastructure partner. Oracle wasn't a household name, for startups. And if you think about the next generation of, college students and young adults, our job here is to, as the cloud democratizes business, we've got to democratize our own offerings in Oracle.
Yeah.
And it really, we're so excited about the opportunities because you're right, we have been focused on the enterprise, but with the cloud, we can sell to, we can deliver against, two people in a garage can use our technology. And so we're tooling and instrumenting our capabilities to be able to enable that. And that's very exciting, but it's also, part of our job is to, frankly, democratize or contemporize.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. And again, in our spirit, we're here as much to evangelize and ask that you give us a chance as much as anything else. But if you go back and look, 10 years ago, a lot of companies might have had a harder time, especially at a startup level, with Oracle in terms of the price to digest the technologies, the price to run it, that sort of thing. But the reality is, we went to reinvent for the cloud. We're faced with a lot of different ideas, because now that we can stand up and run the technology on behalf of many customers, i.e. through a cloud services, we can scale the ability to sell into the smallest of small customers. And as the technology came along and our ability to deliver it, we realized that we also needed to do business differently. And actually, ironically, it came through the acquisition of a company called Micros, which when you go to restaurants, you see the Micros monitors there and with the for checkout and printing your receipts. We are in a position where we were working with one restaurant type companies and little small entrepreneurs who would call up Oracle and at the outset of the acquisition say, "Hey, I need to reorder some paper." And of course, our response was, "No problem. I got a 10-page contract ready to go. Let's get it open. We'll negotiate it for a couple months, and we'll have it ready for you to reorder your paper in no time at all." And the response on the other side, of course, was, "You have to be kidding me. I can't run my business this way." And part of it as a result is, behind the scenes with Oracle, has been reinventing our business practices to enable us to do that sort of fast purchasing process, fast deployment, fast everything in a way that's fast and efficient, and that allows us to scale down to the smallest of businesses and service their needs. So I think that's, again, in the spirit of saying, not only working with startups, but being able to actually service you from an opportunity standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things my observation, we catch a lot of the companies as they're scaling up, like the Lyfts, the Boingo Wireless, the Pandoras, as they go public and they need, mission critical ERP, or they're hiring, 1,000 people a month. They need a mission critical, HCM capability. So we catch that customer, but what we're missing is the really small, mid-size, emerging companies, and that's where this really comes into play, I think, and some of the stuff that Doug's been, frankly, shepherding through the company that really is changing the perception, that really is vital, in my opinion, to the future.
Why don't we turn a little bit to maybe some lessons learned, as we finish our session off, talk about, maybe share some stories about what you've gone through as a three-time entrepreneur, anything you'd share with the audience.
Well, as I was talking about in the back, being a founder can be a very lonely experience. My last startup, in all three startups, first of all, they all ended up, substantially commercially successful, and all had, relatively large 9-figure exits or whatever. But all of them, at one point, we were at the precipice, if that's a word, of almost failing and falling off the cliff. And they all pivoted in one respect or the other. And so I think that you have to be, I use some sports analogies, you got to be on the balls of your feet. You got to continue to, change and pivot. It used to be a dirty word. I think now it's a strength. And
you said that when we were just coming out here, how you were crying because you lost a customer.
I did.
Almost went under.
I lost a deal and was in the airport weeping to my wife. I thought the company was going under. And
then he made fun of me and said, "What kind of corporate bigwig? What problems do you have?" And
yeah, exactly. Not the same.
I said, whenever my 14-year-old comes and starts talking to me, and I start crying, that's curl up in a ball.
No, but every time I think about doing another startup, I'm like, my wife would be like, "Gosh, remember that that time at the kitchen table and we almost lost everything." But the exhilaration of when you build something and hopefully you get an exit, and it's amazing.
How should folks like out here think about interacting with companies like an Oracle? I mean, what's the best way to engage? How do you take advantage of some of these things versus get swamped by by bigness?
Yeah, it's not easy, and trust me, I've got companies that I'm involved with that are part of Oracle's ecosystem, and we have a big app ecosystem. We have relationships with companies all over the globe. So there's massive opportunities, but navigating that is very hard. So that's what we're trying to do here. And there's other programs and other things we're going to be releasing and launching. They're going to make it much simpler and easier to navigate, and it's all about transparency and the way forward. But I would say just come online and check us out, and there's a bunch of people here. We've got a booth for the accelerator in the exhibit hall, and we've made a limited announcements. We're rolling those out, and hopefully we'll have more.
Good.
Yeah,
I hope so. Some of the experiences I have had is it's really important to make sure you come with a win-win situation. I think both sides of any relationship have to feel like there's an opportunity to benefit as opposed to one-sided. And I think a lot of times, certainly when I see the pitches on the business development side, it's more like, hey, you're Oracle, you can sell my stuff. And it's like, that's great, except I got all this other stuff I have to sell that I actually make a lot more money on if we just sell the stuff we've already built. So that's not a great pitch versus one in which, hey, if together you'll sell more of what you have, and this is how it fits with inside your product ecosystem, which makes it more valuable for you, and at the same time it gives me an opportunity to sell my stuff. So things like that where worrying and configuring the pitch goes a long way to opening doors. I think the other big thing I'd say with larger companies is it's important to find someone that cares, and I don't mean it from the perspective that they don't actually care, but in a lot of sense, people have day jobs, and so depending on how they're thinking about it from not a corporate benefit, but from a group or individual benefit, is again finding the right part of the company to do that. And I think that's, again, the beauty of having something like Reggie's organization for us, is to try to help find those win-wins so that folks aren't sitting there navigating it.
Well, and it's one of the things that fascinated me about Oracle is that it's a very product-driven company. So, I think where you're alluding to is, finding a champion, somebody that can... You've been an investment banker and running M&A. I think that startups, I think it would be interesting to hear, what do you look for in an acquisition? What are the traits in the team, or how are you, evaluating needs?
Sure. So before I get all the business plans for us to monetize your startup, our whole acquisition philosophy starts from an engineering basis. So we go through to our engineering executives, and we'll talk with them about a space, a market opportunity, an area, and part of it is a buy versus build analysis. Is this an area we should build ourselves? Should we buy because we need to get market acceleration? We need feature functionality faster. That sort of an idea. And once the engineering group has bought off on the idea and is willing to sponsor that acquisition, then the rest of the team at Oracle will get involved to then figure out, now how do we create a business out of this transaction? So how can we help scale the business, bring more revenue, bring more profits, and help us make money so that we can afford to make the purchase. I think the great thing at Oracle is we're built around trying to do this very quickly. I think it's always been a harmonious relationship between us and startups, simply because scaling is really hard, right? It's easy to build the product, to invent it, well, it's not really easy, I should say. It's hard to do that, but to scale it from there, that's the expertise we can come in with, because we've got the global offices, we've got the global scale and resources to then take something and make it make it that much more successful. So I think that's where we find the greatest the greatest fit.
Awesome.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you all for your time, and really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you.